Welcome to the Practical AI Adoption Podcast. I'm your host, Asa Cox, founder and CEO of Arcanum AI here in beautiful Wellington, New Zealand. In this podcast, we focus on the practical applications of AI in the workforce. We explore real-world examples, we interview business owners, and we discuss how AI is reshaping industries, boosting productivity, and creating new opportunities. But we also discuss the challenges to organizations and to humans on how to embrace and adopt AI in a business context. So whether you're a business leader, an employee, or just a tech enthusiast, tune in to discover actionable insights, implementation challenges, and future trends in AI adoption. Please do share and subscribe so you and others can stay ahead in this AI revolution. Thanks and enjoy the episode. Hi everyone, I'm here with Andrew Wierda this week from Law Cyborg. Welcome, Andrew.
Thanks, Asa.
Looking forward to hearing what you're up to, the lessons that you've learned from your journey, the lessons you've learned from some of your previous employers, some of the stories that may resonate with people listening. And of course, we're here to help people understand how to apply AI, how they get practical value from it. And you're deep into the weeds of it, so we're looking forward to having a chat.
Thanks, Asa.
So to start with, a few quick fire ones to get you warmed up. How do you describe what you do at a dinner party?
Well, I mean, at a dinner party, I'm usually a bit more interested in listening and learning, to be honest. So I'd probably try to delve into what they do as soon as possible. But that aside, and if I was sort of forced into it, I'd probably say that I run a software business, and it sort of comprises of three parts that I manage. There's the vision, there's the development, and there's the sales. Now, every once in a while, I'm sort of a dollar store developer as well. And that's just when I don't want to have a back and forth 50 times just to move something to the right place. But I mean, how would I follow that up?
Yeah. How do you get the conversation going? People like, I have no idea what you're talking about. How do you make it real for them so they don't just turn on and talk to the accountant next to you?
Well, I'd say we develop a chat GPT for accountants. It's
Nice.
Probably the most succinct way to put it.
Very cool.
And I mean, our mission is a bit more complicated than that.
Yes. What's the mission? Just to kind of give the audience the kind of high level elevator pitch of what Law Cyborg's up to.
Right. So, I mean, the problem we're trying to solve is that accountants, lawyers, tax consultants, they have a really, really hard job. And the job is to solve problems for their clients. Sometimes they don't even know what the problems are. They're hard to identify. But even once they've figured out what the problem is, there's just too much to look through to solve those problems. Like the Income Tax Act has 3,800 sections.
Wow.
TAA has more, not more than the Income Tax Act, but more to consider. GST Act, similar story. And I mean, they have to think about that, and they don't want to come to a conclusion that the IRD hasn't come to or disagrees with. So they also have to consider what the IRD has said, and it's just too much. Wow. So what we're trying to do is really just speed up how fast accountants and lawyers can find the information that they need. And we've found that a great way to do that is via AI tools like ours. Yeah.
So I guess one obvious question that the layman may have listening to this podcast is, how do they do it currently? Why can't they just use Google? Why do they need your tool? Yes, there's lots of documents. You'd imagine an experienced person has a bunch of bookmarks in their browser somewhere that they always go to.
Yeah.
Talk us through why the current tooling doesn't work so well.
So, I mean, there's two main approaches at the moment. There is Google going through IRD's tax policy website, their tax technical website, and just figuring out where to look to find what they need. The second is to use a search tool. So there's information service companies like Wolters Kluwer. They have a platform called CCH, or it's called CCH I Know Connect. And then there's also Westlaw in the tech space, and LexisNexis is what a lot of lawyers use as well. And it's sort of, they use Google for law. The problem is that all three are large multinational companies that are asking for minimum term a year or more, and charging tens of thousands a year for what is just some publicly available information, and sometimes they throw in some commentary too. But I mean, even the most, I mean, more senior people use the commentary less because something they might disagree with the commentary, or they want to come to the conclusion themselves. So I mean, it makes sense for something else to be there at a lower cost, and I think we can do it a lot better with AI.
So it's the good old startup premise of better, faster, cheaper.
Yes.
The information's there. It's hard to get. It's expensive to get. Some big corporate somewhere are putting a premium on top of collating all the information, and you're kind of breaking that open and
Yeah,
making it
absolutely. And I mean, NZ has been an afterthought for a lot of this. None of those platforms are built for New Zealand. All of them are built sometimes for Australia, usually for the globe. So sometimes the buttons don't make sense, things are unintuitive. And for a long time, there's just been a sense of there's too many buttons that people don't know what they do, and there's no reason to have them. The filtering doesn't make sense. We've gone from the get-go, and tried to really make the user experience as good as possible, as intuitive as possible, and not including anything people don't need.
And I guess there's a couple of good points in there. One, New Zealand, because it is often an afterthought for software companies, especially big corporate American or European ones who have eventually got to the New Zealand market and haven't still changed the product. They're kind of like, well, you just consume what you've got. And then secondly, a lot of those companies started designing their products way back when, Windows 95 kind of styles, and therefore they haven't evolved with the times either. So UI UX is brutally bad, but because they're so entrenched, embedded into an industry, they just get away with it, and there's no option for better until startups come along and disrupt it. Is that a fair summary?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you've hit the nail on the head with it. These companies are old. All three of those are dating back to 1995,
Wow.
I think.
Wow.
And I mean, they just have those processes in place, right? And those mature shareholders in place that don't want to take risks, and those processes that are really resistant to change. And they make adoption of new technologies, and sometimes really obvious ones that solve many problems, slow.
Yeah. It's kind of interesting, right? Because I mean, Google's been around, what, 20 years now, maybe, if not longer.
So yeah.
And they obviously simplified, I guess, the library or the online document kind of searching piece. And it just, it simplified it to a search box, right? ChatGPT's kind of done the same for AI. So UI, UX, the simplification of it all is often the stimulus for adoption. When you think about that connection, the UI, UX, and AI adoption, why do you think it's so important, and why you focus so much on it?
I think that AI for people can be big, scary, complicated, and it doesn't need to be. And I think a lot of why there are some surprising statistics, at least surprising for people like me, that I don't know, half the people in the world haven't tried sort of a complex large language model yet.
Wow.
And there's companies that have made it easy, and there's ones now that are building this sort of functionality into things.
So, Google's 20 odd years old, and we know that kind of simplified the search process. People loved it because it was just so simple. Search box, find me stuff, right? Really powerful. ChatGPT's had a similar kind of experience for AI, but in a business context, when you're using these legacy tools, I imagine companies like you are really focused on UX. So how do you think through that UX, and how do you think it does impact AI adoption?
Well, I, I mean, like I've mentioned, we don't include anything people don't need, and I think that's really really important for our user base in particular. Um, Accountants have been frustrated for a while that they've been they've been given tools that are really meant for lawyers or tax consultants or people that really want to delve deep, and they just want answers. They want to figure things out fast. They have things to do,
Right.
like getting out to clients and even beyond work, picking up their kids, etc. And our tool wants to really, or what we're trying to do is really get down to that problem solving part and answer things in ways people expect and well, because the reality is you put in a question into a search engine and you don't get an answer most of
Yeah.
the time.
It,
You don't get a
it's
good
pretty
one.
it's pretty amazing how our expectations have changed in the matter of a couple of years, right? Like we used to think Google was amazing, and now we've seen what better looks like. I use Google maybe 10% of the time that I used to, because we now know what better looks like. You've obviously come
Yeah.
from a deep domain expertise, right? You've been in this world, you know the incumbent tools, you know some of the challenges. But if you can just give us a summary of your pathway here, to do what you're doing, um, and then we can kind of dive into some of the observations that you had in that organization that may be applicable to others. But yeah, just plot your path to where you are now.
Right. I might start at university, otherwise it misses a little bit of
Sure.
context. In uni, I studied law. I also studied commerce. I studied finance, economics, and accounting. I thoroughly liked all of it, but I was also really interested in code. It was just I loved the idea of making something. So I self-taught some stuff and made a couple of websites for a couple of companies and did some light software work. Um, and then I finished my law degree and I got an offer at Ernst& Young to go on their tax rotation program. And it's probably important to mention throughout university, um, I found out I really liked tax, which some people
I was gonna
might
say,
think I'm
how do you
psychotic here.
find that out?
So I took a tax paper. I did a research and writing assignment on it, and I just really liked how all my different skills were coming together. I think that was the key thing. Tax is this subject where accounting is important. You got to look at accounts, and you got to make adjustments for tax purposes. Economics is important to really get behind that policy thinking beside the legislation, and that can help with interpretation as well. And then law, all of taxes and legislation. That's what good accountants, good tax consultants, good lawyers go to. And that's usually what the good ones go to first, is figuring out what the law says. So I just saw all my skills that I've been learning all this time coming together. And not to mention finance, which I ended up using in practice a wee bit as well, figuring out whether sort of the net present value was there for going through one method of interpretation versus another, or acquiring a company in a specific way. And I just saw all these skills coming together. I thought this is incredible. I'm built for this. So at Otago, you have to do 5 research and writing assignments, and every excuse I had to write on tax, I did. So obviously, tax law assignment I wrote on tax, but also I took mediation, and I somehow scammed my way into writing my mediation research and writing on mediation in tax,
Good
and
skills.
carried through that process.
And so then you got
um,
onto the
uh,
rotation program, and I assume that means you went to all different aspects of just the tax practice, or kind of other practices as well. And then what did you see there that then caused you to start thinking about what became Law Cyborg?
yeah, so I started Law Cyborg pretty early into the rotation through EY. But that rotation was through the tax specialties. So I was in transaction tax doing work on the acquisitions and of some of the largest companies in New Zealand and sort of Australasia. And I saw when I was doing the technical research that no one liked the tools that were available, and AI was doing some pretty clever things already by that point. So I set aside a few weekends to put something together, and I ended up working a lot more than that on it, and built a sort of a minimal viable product of Law Cyborg. And then I showed it to other juniors. We tried it out a bit, obviously not putting in client data. And we really liked it. Soon the partnership heard about it, and I got in front of them and showed it to them, and they really liked it. But I mean, EY is a big organization with mature shareholders. They're not going to give a graduate that started a few months ago $1 million to build something and lead the development on it. So they kind of kicked rocks.
So talk me through that, because that's an interesting, because there's going to be a number of organizations nowhere near as big as EY that have been around for a while, that maybe have an executive leadership team that maybe is facing the same challenge, right? They've got maybe a graduate who's more tech savvy than most of them, seems to be challenging the status quo of how things are done around here, maybe damaging the potential invites to corporate events sponsored by software companies that we subscribe to. Now, there's all these kind of little personal things, right? So how do you explain what that kind of the kicking rocks kind of stuff kind of felt like, because that's going to be insightful for listeners who either are on that side and are like, well, how do we do better if we've got a similar situation? We've got an Andrew in our organization. How do we make sure that we overcome or we don't repeat some of the mistakes that you experienced?
Well, I mean, I think it's tough, right? Large companies, even medium-sized ones, are risk-adverse organizations. I think that it is a good idea to give more responsibility to those that show it very generally, and testing how that goes isn't that costly. I think for what I'm doing, it makes a lot of sense for it to be a separate third party. There's a lot of work to go into it. As an in-house tool, it wouldn't really make that much sense unless it was used externally, and that's because we would be developing and putting a lot more time, energy, money into making things that it wouldn't make sense for a firm to do by themselves. They just wouldn't get the payoff.
And then from a management perspective, how did it feel, being the one with the idea, with the enthusiasm, when it wasn't as well received or supported as you'd hoped, right? Because there's gonna be people like you in organizations that then get disillusioned, that maybe don't have the same get up and go that you did to go and start your own company, right? For some people, that's just too scary. It's not a thing. So let's assume that you're in the 0.5% of people that would actually do that. And what could your managers or the partners have done, maybe not to go to the full extent that you've ended up doing, but to actually help support more exploration or something that would have been more practically useful or something like that?
Yeah, I think business cases should be open to even the most junior staff. It makes sense. When I started, I mean, EY was phenomenal. It was fantastic, and right from the get-go, the head of tax and law said to us, if you have an idea, and if you have a better way of doing things, make sure you tell people, teach them. You guys, you new graduates are far ahead on all this stuff than your managers, senior managers, partners. And he basically said, you guys need to help us.
Cool.
He probably wasn't envisaging such large of a project. But if that was, I mean, I think organizations, they're not going to build crazy tools, but there's lots of use cases that save a phenomenal amount of time that these young people know are possible, and leaving that open for those young people to point at and tell people, and then just giving them a little bit of time to explore it can have massive payoffs. And I saw it at EY with other tools, and I've seen my clients do this sort of thing all the time now.
Yeah, that's great insight and great advice. I like that. This episode is brought to you by our amazing sponsors, the M2 AI Summit Australia, coming this November 2024. The M2 AI Summit is an event that brings together leading figures in the market to share their unique insights and experiences on how to succeed using AI to increase productivity, customer retention, and growth. The event is a unique opportunity for you to learn from the best in business in person. So for 500 people there, I've been to all of their events in New Zealand, and I'm super excited to be joining them in Australia as well. Great audience, great speakers, great food and drink. Come along and learn how to take the next steps in your AI journey. Visit m2now.com/summit for more information. Now let's get back to our conversation. You had a story about one of the EY partners comparing search versus generative AI outcomes. And you had some anecdotes and kind of, so I think that was really interesting. So if you can share that story with the audience, that'd be awesome.
Right. So this is a wee bit further along in my pathway. So, I mean, by this time I had gotten a good old friend of mine that I met at university to jump on board and help me build this platform on the side. I was letting people book in demos of the software in between 12 p.m. and 1 p.m. was the only slot you could book. And in that slot, everyone would take that. No one would choose after work or before work. But people would organize those 12 p.m.s, and then I would go home from EY on an electric skateboard, quickly take the demo while eating, and then quickly zoom back and then see a notification on my phone that they had signed up. So I was really on the grind there, getting signups, and I really liked the tool. We were really focused on making a great product, and then we had the opportunity to show it to people at EY, and we ran a little trial of it, and one of the partners was testing it out against one of our to-be competitors. Maybe our tool's pretty supplementary at the moment, but he was testing out against CCH's tool, which is a search engine. And I think his way of figuring out whether there were productivity gains was a lot smarter than sometimes I see people discuss, right? A lot of what people discuss is accuracy. They find 10 questions that they can find the result on via a search tool. And then they think about the search tool as having 100% accuracy. And then they ask an AI those questions, and then they see that the AI might have 80% accuracy. And then they're like, oh, okay, the search tool's better. But this partner thought about the questions, figured out what he was going to ask, and then took the two tools up. He also took ChatGPT up, and ChatGPT didn't do very well. So quickly found out just to bring up Law Cyborg and CCH, and then ask those questions. And I mean, at this point, the Law Cyborg tooling was in its infancy. It was very new. I think it got about 7 correct out of the 10. and ChatGPT got like 2, and there would have been a stretch to call them getting it. But the search engine CCH, it came up with something helpful 3 times. So if you think if a tax consultant did have those 10 questions, they were immediately in and it's important to mention our tool gives citations. So they're immediately in a verifiably better spot for out of those 10 times. They've saved time, but at the same time, the accuracy hasn't been 100%. But that's fine. It far outweighs it. So I thought that was really smart from that partner testing.
And I think it's important for people to understand about AI right now, and probably for the foreseeable future, is it's not going to be 100% better 100% of the time, better than various things. There are going to be humans doing things. There's going to be alternative ways, whether it be Google or whether it be other search tools. There's going to be other generalized large language tools like ChatGPT. And then there's going to be domain-specific ones, like Law Cyborg. But there's still our human expectation, because we're comparing it unfavorably against ourselves. We're always going to be looking for the ways in which it is inferior, rather than thinking about the ways that it's going to help us be better, faster, cheaper. I think it's an unfair bar. I mean, I get it, because humans are fearful of what happens if the AI does get it right all of the time. Hopefully, people will begin to get over that initial fear. But I think it's a genuine challenge to all of us who are trying to increase AI adoption. It's kind of begging and pleading with people to try and be fair on the technology, right? I mean, it's very, very new in historical terms, and it's come a heck of a long way. And it's being fair on where it is at. But believing that things are going to improve, right? So I imagine when you first demoed that to where you are now, the improvements have been thick and fast, right?
Yes, yeah, and I mean, in our field in particular, right? Graduates aren't expected to get things 100% of the time, and it is unusual that they come with the expectation that the AI is going to get it 100% of the time. But the AI might be matching the graduate, and the AI is doing it in 30 seconds. Right. I think what's dangerous at the moment, or at least unhelpful at the moment, is that people are kind of mixing other measurement methods in with productivity gains. I think productivity gains need to just be measured by time saved, right? Labor hours saved, or labor hours improved, right? What we've seen has been, if graduates are using our tools, graduates are better. Graduates are now taking more senior consultant kind of level questions, and then senior managers are the ones putting the finishing touches on things. And it means partners are out there meeting clients in person, creating relationships, getting more clients more often. It's helpful for everyone.
Yeah, I think it's the accumulation of benefits that people need to look at and say, not just it's great to get started with very simplistic, can I save 10 minutes here? Can I save 10 minutes there? But once you've gone beyond that, to think of the accumulation and the consequential benefits of time saved in the organizational stack, if you like, that's when it becomes super interesting. So when you're talking to prospects and organizations in your industry, how do you kind of talk them through how they would need to do things differently, right? So there is a change of habits, there's a change of tooling. I imagine you come across a bit of skepticism that you can quickly overcome. But what kind of conversations are you having around AI adoption, and what are kind of the insights you're getting from those conversations?
Yeah, I mean, one challenge that we've faced has been concerns that that graduates won't be learning. I think that's an interesting one, and it's one that has come up in firms before, because there's a bit of an outsourcing model in accounting, and if people outsource or offshore to reduce labor costs, there was a question of, okay, if we offshore the easy things, what are graduates going to do? How are they going to learn? How are they going to get better? But what I've seen and what we've heard from our clients is that from outsourcing, the graduates have been promoted quicker. It's changed in organizations from that first step taking 3.5 years to 2.5 years. And if they're right off the bat getting better, that moves, like I was sort of alluding to before, everyone up that firm pyramid, and it means everyone is doing a better job. Because I mean, the reality is, no one wants to be the preparer. I mean, it's the thing I would have disliked most about my last job, which I really liked generally, is being the preparer. I always told my girlfriend, I'm built to review. I'm not built to prepare. And I was pretty lucky AI came along to save me there.
Yeah, but that's a good point. I mean, to say the impact, taking away a proportion of it doesn't mean by default that you're removing the opportunity to develop somebody's brain and their experience, right? It's just different. It's a change, but the default response doesn't have to be negative all the time. I think conversations that you're having and the industry is having and people like us are having is to try and get people to think in that way, think in the positive accumulation of benefits. Yes, there's going to be some change, and your view on how graduates may have learned on the job before may change slightly, but just lean into the benefits that are going to accumulate and start planning forwards rather than worrying about change, because I think it's a mindset thing, and I think having people with the right mindset, the right managers, the right leadership, the right shareholders, kind of looking at the bigger picture, I think that's where people need to be right now to really lean into the benefits that are coming. So in terms of, I guess to wrap it up a bit, clearly, the power of this technology. You're deep into the weeds on it. You haven't got decades of mental drudgery to undo. Thankfully, you're kind of young and you haven't got to change as much as many other people in their jobs, which is great. But when you start thinking about the future, if you were still working within an organization and they had tools like yours available to them, what do you think the future of a workplace in a complex environment, in tax consultancy, organizations like EY, how do you see the future of those workplaces looking?
Well, I think the tools will change. It sort of does maybe come back to that UX point. And I think the problem with most tools and our tool is that they're passive. And once again, that's I mean that comes back to what we were discussing before about how to create those habits. Right now, I mean, people forget to use AI. They have a problem, and then maybe they spend a few hours solving the problem, and then they realize, shit, I should have ran it through this. I should have just asked this. I would have gotten the answer right away. It would have taken 30 seconds. And that's because most of the tools are passive. You have to go to them to get the benefits. I think what we'll see, I think what your tool at Arcanum already does and gotten ahead of is that these tools need to be doing things for the user actively, or giving reminders to the user that it's already done something, or that they should use this when they make this action or that. And it means that for us, accountants will be able to get ahead of those problems as they come up, sometimes even before they know that there's a problem. And for the user, it means that they don't forget and they're always getting those productivity gains.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think that's the nirvana, right? That's kind of where we all want to be, is the AIs being proactive, autonomous, still with the right governance, the right human in the loop, all of those kind of nice things. But it doesn't feel that far away, right? When we're building technology like we
No,
both
it
are, it
doesn't.
doesn't feel like it's that far away from being a reality. But I think
Yes, yeah.
organizationally, if people aren't thinking about it now, then they do risk not reaping the rewards into the future because the technology is capable, but if your organization isn't ready to use it, then it's going to be a challenge.
Yeah, I think that proactivity point, or that word, kind of hits the nail on the head. In that, when we hire people, number one thing we're looking for is someone that's independent and proactive.
Right.
Now, if AI is going to be a big help, um, we probably should be looking for the same thing in it.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. No, I like that. Yes, we've just released an AI assessment tool to try and help organizations identify what parts of their organization do they really need to lean into in order to be ready to adopt AI. And I think that's the bit that people need to be doing with urgency and then simultaneously beginning to play with some of the tooling that kind of helps them understand why they should be doing it if they don't already
Mm.
realize why. And then I think then they're into the next steps of how do you begin to embed it into organizations to unlock this proactive productivity, which is a really great way of putting it. When we're hiring humans with that mindset, then we should be looking for tools to do that too. It's a great analogy. I like it.
Yes, I mean, at the moment, it's great to hire humans that proactively think to use AI, and then they're already far ahead, especially for generalist
Yeah.
roles. The productivity gains, I mean, I've seen in my own role, right? It's pretty generalist. I have to do a lot of different things. Um, I'm probably maybe even twice as productive. I use AI every single day for something.
And that's incredible to think that in only 2 years we've got tools that can help us be twice as productive. I mean, it's an exciting time to be productive, and
Yes.
hopefully, say all the people that are listening to this podcast are looking for ways to do that. So, really appreciate your time, Andrew. Love your insights. Love the work that you're doing. Where can people check out Law Cyborg and connect with you?
Sure. So you can check out Law Cyborg through our website, lawcyborg.com. We've got a webinar there that shows off our product. It's already used by close to 200 firms at the moment, going up very, very fast. I think a lot of them are just realizing that we have a product. There's a lot of I don't know, maybe grifts
Yep.
out there. Some people don't even believe we have a product, and then their friend tells them that it's incredible, and they jump on and use it, and are sort of inspired as well.
Nice. That's what I want. It's experiential. I think now is the time. Get in, play with the tools, become evangelists, spread the word, and support New Zealand's tech companies who are building these tools.
Yep, I
Thank
agree.
you,
Thanks,
Andrew.
Asa.
Really appreciate your time. Look forward to catching up with you again.
Thanks for having me.
Bye.